to School Talk at Child Connections. I'm Dr. Connie Ellis, and today we're going to be talking about disciplines in the school, what's going on with that, and I have a most wonderful guest, Mark Zimmerman. He is a board-certified criminal law attorney, and he is also the one that handles the student disciplinary cases. Welcome, Mark, to School Talk.
Thank you,
And
Connie.
I know you have a lot to tell us about what's going on in our Sarasota County schools regarding discipline.
Yes.
And so can you give us a little bit of idea of what we're talking about as far as the problems that are going on when regarding discipline?
Sure. Well, I think people would be surprised to find that there are 40,000 students that attend Sarasota County Public Schools. In 2007-2008 school year alone, there were over 20,000 disciplinary referrals. That means for every student, half of them, roughly, had a disciplinary referral. Now, obviously, those statistics are skewed by the fact that there are probably some students who have multiple, and many students, obviously, who never get in trouble. Of that number, 440 students were recommended for expulsion. That means over 1%, 1 in 100 students in Sarasota County Public Schools were recommended for expulsion last year alone. Now, why are students being expelled? By and large, the number one reason, of course, is drug possession. Less than half of that would be possession of some type of a weapon, and I'd say the other large categories would be some type of a violent act involving a fight or some type of insubordination. Of course, as I think a lot of people would expect, it's a more than 2-to-1 ratio, boys being expelled versus girls. And in terms of the ages of the students, 9th grade and 10th grade, that is your median or your most common grade where we're seeing students being expelled.
Now, Mark, this kind of amazes me. As a parent, what would a parent need to know before their child? Let's just start with before their child gets into trouble. What would they need to know?
Well, I think you need to know a little bit about the system and the framework of what are the possibilities that can happen to your child if, in fact, there's a serious disciplinary referral. Obviously, the most serious are the expulsions or recommendations for expulsion that lead to expulsion. Just behind that would be what's called a deferred expulsion, where a student gets to remain in their given school, but they are on sort of like a probationary status, and if there is even a minor follow-up disciplinary referral, that child is going to be expelled. The third thing that people need to know is that how do people is a suspension. A child can be suspended for 10 days, 5 days, even 1 day, and those suspensions can often lead to recommendations for expulsion.
Now, you were part of a committee that created a book, right? I want you to talk a little bit about that because that helps the parent know and the student know what is expected of them, right?
Sure. Well, all the parents of students in Sarasota County Schools know that every year they get their student and family handbook sent home to them. They're required to pull out the sheet in the back and they sign it. And what they're signing is that they've read it. Question whether or not people are reading it very thoroughly. But we didn't create that handbook. That handbook is mandated by state statute. All school districts have to have a student and family handbook. And every school district's handbook looks quite different. Some of them seem to be as big as the phone book. Some of them are quite thin. And what we've done in our local committee is over the years, I've been on this committee now I think 4 years, is try to make it more user-friendly. So the book contains anything from the things I just talked about, but giving more detail about the process to health concerns, policies regarding tardiness and leaving school and after-school activities. I mean, it's really sort of soup to nuts, the whole panoply of what parents and students need to know.
Does it include like a code of conduct? I mean, does it go into that also, what is expected?
It goes into it in terms of giving the parents what we think is the most pertinent information. To actually see the entire rules and policies and procedures for the school board, you'd have to consult the website. The school's website actually contains the student and family handbook, but also has literally all the rules and regulations like a law book.
Oh, and but you're trying to make it easier for the parent to read, and like it has a, because we're trying to encourage parents to read
Sure.
this.
Right. If we'd included everything in there, it would just be too dense, and that's what we're encouraging is readership. Being realistic, we know that most likely parents are going to consult this handbook when there's a problem.
When there's a problem,
Sure.
exactly.
So what I recommend that people do is, because again, being realistic, they're not going to read it cover to cover. What I'd like to see people do is to read it a lot of the ways that one reads a newspaper. Read the headlines. There are bolder issues in there. If you read all of those, when the problem comes up, you're reading it in August. When the problem comes up in May or in January, you'll say, you know what, I saw that in the handbook. I can go back and consult it.
Because that's like, it's most people think, not my child. That's why they don't read it. Not my child.
Exactly.
Because they're going to have the problem.
Exactly. But the statistics show, Connie, that in fact there is a significant chance that their child will, at some point between kindergarten and 12. In fact, there were students recommended for expulsion last year as young as first grade in Sarasota County School District.
Now that does amaze me. What could happen to a first grader with a first grader?
Well, just because a first grader was recommended for expulsion doesn't mean that I agree that there's ever a circumstance in which a first grader should be expelled. But for example, and I know that we had a fairly high-profile incident that happened in Pinellas County, not in Sarasota County, some years ago, where a student was violent toward a teacher. That can lead to expulsion. I'm not saying it should lead to expulsion, but it can.
So what do they do? What do they do when their child gets into trouble?
Well, the first thing they need to do is they need to educate themselves. And obviously part of that is reading the handbook. But if it's a really serious matter, they need to go to a next level. For example, consulting the school's website and reading the actual rule that the school is saying that they've violated. Now, as things get more serious, parents need to step up their learning curve. So they might want to speak with a parent liaison and even potentially an attorney.
Okay, because most parents, if something happens, they don't know what to do and they want to talk to someone. They don't want to read something, they want to talk to someone. So you suggest they talk to the parent liaison, which we're going to talk to a parent liaison later on in our show, and then call an attorney.
Well, I don't think that you need to call an attorney.
Okay, well that's what I wanted to get clear.
If the child is sent to lunch detention because they, missed the trash can, that's not something that they need to call an attorney for. But remember that the things that students are being recommended for expulsion for are often potentially criminal acts, which means that this can go not only from a school disciplinary scenario, but it can actually spin into a criminal prosecution, be it in juvenile court or even potentially adult court.
So what are some examples of what you're talking about?
Well, obviously drug possession,
Okay.
Weapon possession, naturally. Fighting in and of itself is not a crime, but it can be criminal in nature. These things are fact specific. And remember, the school district's primary mission is to educate our children. They're not really set up to be a mini court system, but in this arena of student discipline, they're acting like a mini court system.
Okay, thank you very much for that, and we will be back, and we'll be back with more on this subject of discipline.